Hello everyone, it's Lucian again, and I haven't posted in a while, but with someone who has the health conditions that I do, it makes sense that there's going to be, appointments or bad pain days or, what have you. So, that's why I'll never say, oh, I'll post a new video every Tuesday or every Tuesday and Friday, like so many channels do, because that's not viable for someone like me. Um, so last week, my physical therapist diagnosed me with bursitis in both hips. Just throwing that out there to let you guys know another health issue. And she was very confused because, according to her, most people who get bursitis in their hips are runners. And I've been doing nothing but laying in bed for the last, well, not nothing, but almost nothing besides laying in bed for the past, a little over a year now, almost 13 months. And the pain in both of my hips was so severe by the time I was 19 that I was incapable of running. It hurt too bad. Um, my right hip has always hurt worse than my left hip, although she said the bursitis is worse in my left hip. But when I was 16, I was curled up in a ball on the floor. My mom was kicking me repeatedly in my right hip, and after that, it's just never been the same. So it's hurt since then. But it happens. Childhood injuries happen. Um, so I wanted to talk a little bit today about my childhood. Mainly what it was like growing up in the culture I did, knowing that I was gay. So I always told people, first when I came to California, I would tell people, oh, my parents are strict Christian, and I would hear, oh, mine too, and then there was one person, for example, that said that, and I was looking at their Facebook profile, and they had a picture of themselves with their mom. Their mom was showing cleavage and wearing pants. My mother would never do either of those things because she thinks that it's just as wrong as telling people to rape her. And the friend was wearing a shirt that said, I love Satan, or Satan rules, or something about Satan. My mom would never pose for a picture with me if I was wearing that. She wouldn't allow me to be in her house or anywhere near her if I was wearing a shirt like that. If I was at, say, a family gathering and wearing that, she would leave because she couldn't make me leave if it wasn't at their house, although she would ask me to leave and try to bully me into leaving first. So I couldn't find what actually fit, because even in the summer, my mom always made me wear long sleeves. She always wears long sleeves. I wasn't allowed to show that I had a shape whatsoever. Showing curves was against my mom's rules. Wore a lot of jumpers. They had to be ankle length. I had to wear knee-high socks at all times. And I stumbled upon a video about the Quiverfull movement, and I never heard of the Quiverfull movement, but every single thing that they said about it was exactly the way my mom was. And one of the things that they used as an example, the most famous Quiverfull people, are the Duggars, that were the TV show 17 and Counting, then 18 and Counting, then 19 and Counting. And it fit. My mom didn't believe in birth control either. She believed in having as many children as God would be willing to bless her with. My dad was a bit more practical. My dad has turned Christian about 10 years ago now. I'm 36, so I was well out of the house by then. And I was already in California for a few years by then. But the whole time I was growing up, he was an atheist. The thing is, he believed that my mom had a good childhood and my dad had a bad childhood. So, because of that, he gave her complete control over the kids. The only time he ever had any say is when my mom didn't know what to do about my brother once he reached teenage years. And I would assume all of my brothers, but I was out of the house when my younger brother was 10. Yeah, he was 10. So I never saw him as a teenager. After I moved out of the house and told my parents I wasn't coming back when I left the cult, they no longer allowed me to speak on the phone to my younger siblings. So I didn't get to talk to my younger siblings hardly at all as they were growing up. Anyway, so back to the story though. I knew when I was 5 that I was gay. When I was 5, my best friend was 4. And I, for all intents and purposes, fell in love with her. I didn't really understand it. I hadn't really developed a sense of what that was yet. But looking back at how I treated her and how I thought about her and my feelings towards her, that's what it was. And we used to play on the playground, and she'd be the damsel in distress, and I'd be the knight in shining armor that came and saved her, and we'd ride off on my horse together. And I even told my mom I wanted to marry her. Luckily, my mom thought that was just a kid being a kid and not realizing what marriage was, and thinking that just meant that I wanted to be friends with her forever. And then when we moved, my mom made sure that I never got to see her again. So I don't know what happened to her. Her name was Francesca. So, if anyone knows of someone named Francesca who lived in Indianapolis in 1986 and 87, who would now be 35, let me know. Anyway, so then, my next crush started when I was 11, and then, I had a lot of crushes after that. When I was 13, I had my first celebrity crush, which was Daryl Hannah, specifically in Blade Runner, and then there was one other movie she was in, I don't remember. And my parents didn't let me watch those things. It's just, my mom thought that they had enough control over me that I wouldn't watch what she didn't approve of while they were gone, and that was wrong. So we had cable up until I was 15, and cable gave me a better education about the world than my parents ever did. I watched, talk shows and Roseanne and Heathcliff. My mom was so mad when she found out that I watched Heathcliff because he conspired. Just like I was allowed to watch I Love Lucy until I was 13 or 14, then my mom decided that the normal hormonal changes I was going through, I was learning that behavior from Lucille Ball in I Love Lucy, so then I wasn't allowed to watch it anymore. So, when I was 16, I met my very first girlfriend. She was 14. I was in love with that bitch for so long. Sadly, my mom decided that there was a demon on her, so I was never allowed to see her. So our entire, relationship was like a month and a half, 2 months long, and it was over the phone. But now, that was 19 and a half years ago. She and I still talk. She's the only friend that I had, the only person that wasn't a relative that I had in Indiana that I still have as a friend. And then the only other person I keep in contact with on a regular basis would be my younger brother that's closest to me in age. So I knew from a young age that everyone around me hated me, if only they knew who I actually was. So in between that and in between the extreme abuse I was suffering at home that I had to make sure to cover up and hide, I learned to compartmentalize really well, and I learned to be happy all the time. I mean, I'm a genuinely happy person. I am. But my mom taught me to hide my pain, discomfort, anger, sadness, everything with a smile. There was one time I was crying about, I put a hole in my tights on our way to church, and I started crying about it. And my mom said, happiness is a choice, and you should choose to be happy. And I said that I didn't want to be happy. I was sad. And she started singing a song that the pastor's daughter sang. The entire lyrics were, happiness is a choice and I choose to be happy. Um, and then it was one city block that she drove at 35 miles an hour in between when she started singing that song and when she stopped singing it and started punching me, while still telling me happiness is a choice and you will choose to be happy. So, 10 minutes later, we're at church and I have to pretend everything's fine. So I was told to, run to the bathroom really fast and wash my face so that no one could tell I had been crying. Um, and make sure that I looked good and then come back. And I did. Um, so I learned how to hide. And, when you're in an environment where basically it is death to be gay, I say basically because I really don't want to belittle what's going on in, Chechnya and Russia and a lot of African countries, that, homosexuality is literally punishable by death. And in Chechnya, all the, torture that they're going through. Um, so not the same kind, but I'll explain in a minute what I mean by basically. But when you live in an environment like that, you learn to put out little tiny, tiny feelers and then see if the person puts any feelers back. And every time I put out feelers, no one ever put any feelers back. So I just figured that I was, weird. Um, I mean, I knew that I wasn't wrong for how I felt. I never thought that falling in love with women was wrong. Um, Even when I had it thrown in my face that it says in the Bible, if a man lays with a man like he lays with a woman, then it's a sin and he should be put to death. My response then was, well, yeah, but the Bible doesn't say anything about a woman lying with another woman. It doesn't. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. Um, Granted, in later translations, there's a passage in the New Testament that says that the reason Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed was because the men laid with other men and the women laid with other women. But if you, the way I swung it was, go back to the original text, get out a concordance, look it up in Hebrew, look it up in Greek, does it actually say that? And it doesn't. Now, my response would be, well, it also says that it's an abomination punishable by death to eat shellfish, to wear clothing of mixed fabrics, for a man to cut the hair in front of his ears. Um, my parents technically should have sold me, um, to whoever they chose for me to marry. And if I ever talked back, I was supposed to be dragged outside the city gates and stoned to death. I mean, there's so many rules in the Bible that people don't follow. And, if you want to believe in the Christian God, wonderful. If that works for you, great. You know, either follow all of the rules of the Bible or realize that that is a book that is thousands of years old, supposedly. And I'm sure I'll talk at some point about my beliefs on how the Bible was written and such. But it was changed so many times. It was changed, at the gathering in Alexandria. It was changed by, King James. I'm sure it was changed other times too. And then all of the translations after that. Like, either follow every single thing in the Bible or realize that it's guidelines, and what you should take from it is, be excellent to each other, as Bill and Ted say. Like, basically, don't be a dick. And, love your fellow human being. Be kind to them. Like, that's the message that should be taken away. Um, so, getting back to my first girlfriend, I put out feelers and she put out feelers back. So I put out stronger feelers and she put out what in my mind was very definite signals. So then I put out what I thought was a definite signal, and then she responded by talking about a male. So then I thought, okay, I must be wrong. But then during our first conversation, we were talking and I put out feelers again and she put them out back, etc., etc., etc. we did our little dance for the first like 45 minutes, and then um, I just flat out asked her to be my girlfriend, and she said yes. So it was awesome. Um, so I finally had someone that I loved and understood, and that understood me, because she also was growing up in the same household I was, same type of household I was. Being homeschooled, only being allowed to be around other homeschoolers who prescribe to your parents' religious beliefs and dress code, etc. Very involved in her church, all of that stuff. Um, so we would do phone calls most days, and I started emailing her because we had just gotten dial up internet. Actually, we'd gotten dial up internet like a year and a half before that, but I was allowed to have my own account. Now, I didn't know that my parents could get into my account and see what I wrote. So I was writing her letters and, poetry. My mom misinterpreted my poetry because my mom is exceedingly literal. Um, that song, if I die young, bury me in something, take me down in a bed of roses, sink me at the river at dawn, blah, blah, blah. Um, when I was visiting my parents last in 2011, my younger sister told me that that song reminded her of me, and my mom was horrified, and she was like, "Catherine, how dare you?" Um, and I was like, "No, Mom, I took it as a compliment," but my mom took it literally, as in my sister decided that I was going to die young. And it's like, no, Mom, that's not what she meant. So she's funny like that. Anyway, since my girlfriend's mom didn't feel like driving all the way to where we were, because she lived all the way on the outskirts of Indianapolis on the east side, and we lived all the way on the outside of Indianapolis on the west side in Brownsburg. Our closest neighbor was 10 miles away. And my mom wouldn't drive me over there because, she was sick and in bed all the time and needed me to be there constantly to help her. And, this innocent girl supposedly had demons attached to her, so my mom didn't want me associating with her. So we even had to keep our phone calls a secret, that they were happening, because my mom didn't know anything about it. So at one point I started getting desperate, so I decided I was going to run away, and I was going to walk to the closest place where I could find a hitchhike from, and then hitchhike over there. And extremely naive me decided I was going to live on the streets, not realizing what living on the streets actually entailed. Because I was raised that basically bad people only exist in New York City and the state of California. So I didn't really know that bad people existed, that people that really did shitty things to people existed for the most part. Anyway, so right as I was getting ready to crawl out of my bedroom window, my bedroom door opens, and this is 3 o'clock in the morning. My mom's standing there, and she told me for the last hour she had been battling with God about, because he had woken her up telling her that, that she needed to come see me, etc., etc., and she was telling God that she was going to wait till morning because I was asleep, and finally the urge got so strong that she, hauled her ass all the way up the stairs because she was sleeping downstairs in the living room because the stairs were too hard for her. She has myalgic encephalomyelitis, by the way. So, an hour and a half of a conversation between her and I finally broke down and told her that I was going to run away, and she asked me why, and I told her it was because they were too strict, blah, blah, blah. I had turned 17 by this point, by the way. Because when I met her, it was a month and a half before my 17th birthday. And this was, shortly after. It was right after school ended, so sometime in June of 98. But I didn't tell her anything about my girlfriend. So then she made me promise that I would still be there in the morning, because she knows that once I say the words I promise, I won't go back on that. then, they found out that they found the emails and they decided I was demon possessed. And my mom asked me what she possibly could have done so wrong and told me about what a sin it was, blah, blah, blah. Took me to my church. I went through an exorcism. And then for the next year, I was a prisoner. I was not allowed to talk to anyone on the phone. I was not allowed to get on the internet. I was only allowed to leave the house with my parents' supervision, and if I was going to the grocery store to help shop, church, or a family gathering. And that was it. So I was in this farmhouse on 2 acres of land, surrounded by 2,000 acres of cornfields, closest neighbor 10 miles away, with no links to the outside world. I mean, whenever my mom was not right by the phone, she would unplug it and take it with her. So I couldn't make any calls. I couldn't do anything. So that was difficult. That was extremely difficult. And then also, since my girlfriend didn't know anything about it, and just suddenly, she's calling to try to talk to me, and no one's answering, or my dad is answering and saying that I am not available, she decided that I hated her. And a month and a half before my 18th birthday, my parents let me out for the first time. They let me stay with a friend whose parents were even more strict than my parents were. And they were going to take me to a Christian basketball game. And my parents were promised that I would be under adult supervision at all times. And that, they would make sure I didn't make phone calls except to them, etc., etc. Like, my friend's parents dialed the phone for me to make sure I was actually calling my parents. It was still a fucking prison, but at least I got to see my friends. So my friends take me to the basketball game, and we're sitting there like a full half hour before it starts. Like 5 minutes before it starts, I suddenly feel this energy walk into the room, and I look over, and there she is. My ex-girlfriend is right there. And I'm like, whoa, because she was so beautiful. She was wearing a short sleeve red top with a v-neck and black skirt, I believe. Maybe it was pants, but black covering all of her legs. And I had no idea she was going to be there. I had no idea that our homeschooling group's basketball team was battling her homeschooling group's basketball team. And, she had her own difficulties because at one point I wrote her a letter and gave it to her cousins who were close friends of mine to give to her, and instead they gave it to their mom, who then gave it to her mom. So she was pretending to be crushing on one of the basketball players so that her mom would, back off of the whole "why are you gay" thing. So, she asked me if I wanted to go in the bathroom with her, and I did, and we were talking, and she was like, "Oh, I hate this shirt," and then she grabbed it by the bottom and pulled it down to the point that it was completely below her bra, and then, like, let go of it and popped back up, and it's like, that was so smooth. I know that wasn't I know now that wasn't accidental. At the time, I actually thought it was, though. So then we left the stadium, and even though it was freezing cold, February in Indiana, it was snowing, and we were both in short sleeves. We didn't want to go back and get our coats because we didn't want anyone else to, like, stop us because, there were adults that were supposed to be watching me. And we spent the entire basketball game just walking with our arms around each other, walking around, just talking and catching up. And then my mom called in the morning and let me know that her cousin's mom called her and told her that I had disappeared. My mom had decided that we had had sex. I told her no. I didn't even know what sex was at that point. I just knew it had to do with two people being naked in the same place together. I didn't even know that more than two people could have sex. And I thought rape was somebody taking all of a woman's clothes off without her permission. So I was kept extremely naive. Way too naive for my own good, but that's a story for another time. And I told her Mom, I would rather be a prostitute on the streets than live under your roof, so I'm moving out on my 18th birthday. And she started crying, and she and I had about a 3 hour talk where we hashed out, her giving me a bit more freedom in exchange for me not leaving home yet. I won't bore you with the details because it doesn't matter. Um, but I decided to try. I decided to try to be, normal. Air quotes. There we go. I decided to try to be normal. And I didn't develop emotional or romantic attachments to men. Some of them seemed like I might want to try having sex with them, whatever that was, but I've never once developed an emotional attachment to a man. Romantic emotional attachment. I've developed platonic emotional attachments. Um, so I decided that I wanted to be a missionary, and I specifically wanted to go to the most dangerous places in the world that I could, and witness to the most dangerous people I could, so that I could try to be a martyr. Because I figured if I can't have what is the deepest desire of my heart, which is, a wife, a feminine, beautiful, female, intense, equal partner, then I would do reckless, dangerous things and do them, in God's name, um, and then, die young. That's what I was hoping for. So then I went to a youth convention and decided to sign up for their internship program, which was a cult, which is another story for another time. But um, denying who you truly are doesn't work. It never works. You won't be happy. And I even ended up marrying a man to try to give my parents some kind of relief. I was in that marriage for 5 years. It was difficult. Um, and we had a poly relationship, so I wasn't allowed to do anything without him. But we pulled 9 different girls into threesomes during that time, and some of them were repeats because I couldn't. I've never been able to be monogamous with a male. I've always missed females. I love the female form. I love the way their skin smells. I love the way it feels. I love the way their bodies look. No matter what the body type is, it's just women are beautiful, intense, amazing creatures, and I love having a goddess to worship and adore. That's just me. And if my parents had been more loving and accepting, I wouldn't have moved so far away. I wouldn't go, 6, 9, 12, 15 months without talking to them at all. Like, they alienated me so much. And there's so many more things even after I moved out that they alienated me with without meaning to. But they did. And so if you're a parent of an LGBTQIA whatever, a non-cisgendered or a non-binary or a different sexual orientation than what you believe is right, loving your child is so much more important. I mean, would you really prefer that they be on the street and dead, or that, if they're not going to be straight, that they're going to feel so far away from you that they move as far away from you in the country as they can get? I mean, I'm living a few miles away from the ocean on the west coast. My parents are in Indiana, so that's towards the east coast. I'm the farthest away in the continental U.S. that I could possibly be. The farthest I could be would be Hawaii, but I hate the sun, so that's not gonna fucking happen. But love them. They have enough stress and enough worry without you adding to it. And that's it. If anyone wants me to dig deeper on, Quiverfull, how I grew up, speak more about my abuse, anything. Ask me a question. Ask me anything. My life is an open book. I would love to talk about it. All right. Catch you guys later.